Hey everyone, I read a lot of Reddit, so you don't have to. And today, I've got some stories that actually made me stop scrolling. Subscribe for more, and let's go. My parents' church is pressuring them to cut me off over a confession I made when I was 16. I just found out, and they won't talk to me. This is a story about a confession made in good faith that became a weapon against her. It's a story about institutional betrayal and what happens when authority figures decide you're a threat. I'm 26 now. When I was 16, I was raised in an evangelical church. I was a normal teenager, going to youth group, figuring myself out. I was in a relationship with someone outside our faith, and I had genuine spiritual questions about that. So I did what seemed responsible. I went to the youth leader and confessed. I told him about the relationship. I asked for guidance. He said he'd pray for me. It felt mature at the time. Fast forward a decade. I'm 26, living my own life, a completely different person. My mom sends me a voice memo. Her voice is shaking. She tells me to leave her life alone. She says I've caused enough damage. No explanation, just cold silence. I call my brother, panicking. That's when everything comes out. For months, church leadership has been telling my parents I'm spiritually corrupted, that when I confessed at 16, I was trying to seduce someone into our faith, that I'm a predatory threat to my younger siblings, that if they don't cut me off, I'll destroy the family's salvation. That's not what happened. I asked for guidance. Somewhere, a youth leader twisted that into an accusation of predatory behavior, and the church has spent months weaponizing that lie against me. She never saw it coming, because she thought that confession was private, a moment of vulnerability with someone she was supposed to be able to trust. But institutional protection has a way of turning these moments into leverage. So she started asking hard questions. Because a voice memo saying, "Leave me alone," doesn't just appear without context. When she pressed her brother, that's when he started explaining what the church leadership had actually been doing behind the scenes. That's when OP realized something that made her stomach drop. Her 16-year-old confession had been weaponized into something unrecognizable. At 16, I wasn't doing anything radical or hidden. I was dating someone who wasn't part of the church. They were a genuinely good person, kind, respectful, just not one of us spiritually. I was confused about whether I was doing something wrong, so I went to the youth leader and asked for guidance. I told him about this person, explained my confusion, asked what he thought I should do. That was the entire conversation. No drama, just a confused kid seeking actual help. Then, fast forward 10 years. Last week, my mom sent me a voice memo. Her voice sounded hollowed out. She said, "I need you to leave me alone. I can't have you in my life right now. I'm not going to explain this. Just stop contacting us." No context, no warning. Just that message, cold and final. I called her back. She didn't pick up. I texted my dad. Radio silence. So I called my brother in a panic. That's when he told me everything. The church had been working on my parents for months, repeatedly bringing up my spiritual history, building a narrative about who I was. My confession about dating someone outside our faith had been twisted into accusations about being spiritually corrupted, a threat to the family's faith. The guidance I'd asked for as a confused kid had become ammunition. That was the moment everything clicked into place for OP. This wasn't about a single confession or a single conversation. This was a calculated campaign. And the fact that it had been building for months without her even knowing, that was the part that truly shook her. OP called her brother. She demanded the truth. He finally gave it. Leadership had built a narrative to her parents over months. In meetings, her spiritual history came up. The pastor wondered how families with corrupted members maintained faith. She was described as dangerous, someone who'd tried to seduce others. Her parents now believed their daughter was a spiritual threat. It was poison dripped into conversations month after month. Comments hit like confirmation. People who recognized this exact playbook. This is textbook cult isolation tactics. They're creating a narrative about you that can't be challenged because it's being passed through the church rumor mill instead of directly to you. That's intentional. And then OP revealed the trap. Your parents are being manipulated by authority figures they trust implicitly. It's not their fault they're believing this, but that doesn't mean you have to accept being cut off. Have you considered having a third party, like a family counselor, involved in any conversation? I tried reaching out to my mom with exactly that suggestion last month, told her I'd be open to family counseling. She said, "The elders have already prayed about this and determined that you're not ready for reconciliation. It's like there's no door to negotiate through because the church has already decided my fate without ever hearing from me directly." A week later, OP found the letter. I found the letter the church sent my parents explaining why I'm a threat to their salvation. I found a letter on my brother's counter from the church, signed by 3 elders. They wrote that I'd made advances toward church members, been caught in compromising situations, and created spiritual vulnerability for younger members. They detailed instances, or what they claimed were instances, of my trying to pull other people away from the faith. Every accusation was vague, but specific enough to seem real. The language was calculated, never direct, but circling predatory behavior without saying it outright. These men had never spoken to me directly. They'd built this picture from rumors and a twisted version of something I said at 16 when seeking guidance. Nobody at that church had thought to ask me what actually happened. Nobody had said, "Let's hear her side." The narrative was sealed the moment someone decided what I was.
Then the update post landed. What OP discovered wasn't confusing anymore, it was intentional. I found the letter the church sent my parents explaining why I'm a threat to their salvation. I found a printed copy of an email from the youth pastor and 2 elders addressed to my parents. It outlines why I'm a threat to the family's faith. The accusations are specific. It says I attempted to seduce someone to pull them away from the church. I mocked their beliefs. I demonstrated patterns of manipulation. I was leading people astray. Here's the thing, none of that happened. I mentioned a relationship with someone outside the church, and I was confused about it. I never mocked beliefs to the youth leader. I never led anyone astray. I was 16, seeking guidance. But the letter treats my one private conversation as evidence of months-long corruption. It quotes things I supposedly said that I have zero memory of. When I see those words written down, when I see how deliberately they twisted what happened, this wasn't miscommunication, it was intentional. Someone took what I said at 16 and constructed lies around it. The realization settles in your chest. Not miscommunication, deliberate fabrication. That youth leader violated your trust and your privacy the moment they shared that confession with anyone. Confessions made in confidence to a counselor figure have ethical boundaries for exactly this reason. Depending on the state, there might actually be legal liability here. Some jurisdictions have counselor-patient privilege, even for religious counselors if they hold themselves out as providing therapy. It's worth consulting a lawyer to see if the church has violated any privacy laws, or at minimum to send them a cease and desist about sharing OP's personal information. The fact that they're not even willing to sit down and hear your side is the biggest red flag. Healthy families work through conflict. Religious communities that demand isolation are not healthy.
But OP needed to see the actual documentation herself. She requested copies of every church communication sent to her parents. What came back sealed everything. I found the letter the church sent my parents explaining why I'm a threat to their salvation. I finally got copies of all the letters the church sent my parents, 8 months of emails and documents. And what I found wasn't miscommunication, it was fabrication. They didn't summarize my confession, they rewrote it completely. The letter claimed I had sexually seduced youth group members, that I was deliberately corrupting their faith, that I was a predator working to undermine the church. None of that happened. At 16, I told a youth leader I was in a relationship outside our faith and struggling with it spiritually. That's all I said. Everything else, the seduction narrative, the talk of me corrupting others, the language about being a calculated threat, came from them, not from me. My lawyer is drafting a cease and desist. My brother believes reconciliation is possible once my parents see the actual gap between what I confessed and what they were told. I'm not ready to hope with him yet. Right now, I'm focused on documentation, on proof, on making sure the record is clear about what happened. If they want to come back from this, they need to face what they did first. Here's what institutional abuse looks like when it moves slowly. The church didn't send one dramatic accusation. They sent a narrative, rewriting her confession piece by piece into something unrecognizable. A teenager's vulnerable admission became a story about predation. This is how authority figures poison families when they weaponize confidentiality. Not with one moment, but with months of small rewrites. Her brother still believed reconciliation was possible once her parents saw the truth. She was focused on making the record clear, but she understood something he maybe hadn't yet. Institutions almost never confess their rewrites. They defend them. The comment section locked in immediately on what had actually occurred. Get everything in writing from now on. If you contact your parents, email them. If the church reaches out, document it. You might need this evidence for a restraining order or legal cease and desist. That's where OP's at right now. On to the next one. Everyone in my town calls me Emma, but I know my name is Catherine. I can't prove it. This one is from Memory Slip 29, a 29 female, posted to No Sleep about 6 months ago. The user opens with something that sounds utterly absurd, a complete reality shift nobody else seems to notice. At first, you think it's creative writing, then you keep reading. My name is Catherine, or at least I'm almost certain it is. Everyone in town calls me Emma. My driver's license says Emma. My birth certificate says Emma. Every document says Emma. But I remember being Catherine. I have clear memories of it. It started 2 weeks ago. I woke up and something felt wrong. I checked my phone. Emma. My wallet. Emma. Driver's license, email, bank account, all changed to Emma. I thought it was a prank at first. I called my parents desperately. They went quiet. My mom said, "Honey, we named you Emma." But that's not the truth. I have memories of being Catherine, but I can't find any evidence. No photos labeled with my real name. No yearbooks. Nothing. I needed confirmation. My best friend from high school was also named Emma. Different last name. She would know the truth. I looked up her number. Disconnected. So, I checked Facebook. Her profile exists under my last name. Not her maiden name, my last name. And the photos are impossible. We're in them together at events I don't remember attending. High school parties, family functions, things that never happened. She's smiling next to me in every one, and I'm wearing clothes I've never owned. And that's where the first post ends. OP leaves us with that detail. A Facebook profile that shouldn't exist, photos from events she was never at, all documented and time-stamped like a slow replacement happening in real time. What OP doesn't mention yet is that something is still happening. Something is still changing, but she doesn't know it yet. All she knows is that the world has agreed on a lie, and she's the only one who remembers the truth. The next morning, Catherine pulled a box of documents from her closet. Birth certificates, social security papers, old driver's licenses, everything that was supposed to prove who she was. Her hands moved with methodical determination, the way someone preparing for a funeral moves through necessary tasks. She was determined. She was terrified. Every document said Emma. Birth certificate, Emma. Social security, Emma. Report cards, Emma. School records, Emma. Yearbooks, Emma. Even the photographs with her mother's handwriting on the back, Emma. The name burned in her eyes until it stopped looking like letters and became something inevitable, something written into the very fabric of her life. By afternoon, Catherine called her parents. She needed to hear them say it was a mistake. Instead, her mother's voice went carefully neutral. Her father's tone carried the gentle concern people use with someone who's losing their grip on reality. They insisted they'd always named her Emma. They suggested she see someone about these false memories. It was the worst kind of betrayal. Not an attack, but absolute certainty that she was wrong. That night, Catherine scrolled through digitized newspaper archives, not sure what she was looking for. And then, at 2 in the morning, she found something that froze her entire body. I found the 1998 obituary. I think I understand what's happening and I can't stop it. There's an obituary in the Gazette from June 15, 1998. Emma, last name, age 6, drowned in Clearwater Lake near our town. The funeral photo is there in the archive, pixelated, old, but unmistakably there. It's me. Or, it's the girl I was in my childhood memories. She would be my exact age now if she'd lived. That's what's making me completely lose it. The article describes her favorite playground, the birthday parties she had, the friends she played with during the spring. Those are my memories. I remember all of that as myself. How can I remember the life of someone who died in 1998, before I was born? My hands are shaking too badly to type properly. I found her name in yearbooks from middle school she would have attended. In photographs from field trips I remember going on, school dances I remember attending. She's in those pictures, grown up, living what I remember as my own life. I need someone to tell me I'm crazy. Things got darker after she started making calls. I started calling people yesterday. Old friends from elementary school. Sarah Chen didn't remember me at all. When I called her, she said, "I'm sorry, who is this?" I reminded her, "Sarah, it's Catherine." Then, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. I don't know any Catherine." I hung up and threw up. Derek called me back after a voicemail. He remembered me as Emma. He said, "Oh, hey, Emma, been a while." I said, "Derek, my name is Catherine, not Emma." He laughed and said, "Okay, Emma, did you hit your head?" I pulled down the photo albums from my parents' house. 30 years of pictures, all with captions. Every single one said Emma. Emma at her 3rd birthday, Emma at graduation. I was in all of them. The same person doing the same things. But the name underneath was always Emma. I found a picture from my baptism. I'm in a white dress being held over water. I remember the cold feeling of it. I'm almost certain I remember being baptized as Catherine. But underneath, in my mother's handwriting, Emma baptized, 1997. I can feel something happening. The memories are slipping. This morning I looked in the mirror and for just a second I couldn't remember what my real name was. I had to think hard. Catherine, Catherine, Catherine. I said it out loud 20 times until the word felt like mine again. But how long can I hold on? The Reddit thread filled with theories and concern. This reads like textbook Capgras delusion or a dissociative break. Please see a psychiatrist. The fact that you're losing confidence in your own memories is a sign you need professional help, not Reddit speculation. Whether this is real or a mental health crisis, you're not safe in that town. The people around you are reinforcing whatever is happening. You need to leave and get help from people without a vested interest in keeping you confused. But one comment caught her attention. Before you assume supernatural, check analog records. Hospital birth certificates, baptism records, anything filed before digitization. If your identity was rewritten, digital records are easy. Paper's harder to change. Then she found something. OP returned with an update. A, 29 female, staring down the impossible. Proof that someone else, someone dead, was rewriting her from the inside out. I found the 1998 obituary. I think I understand what's happening, and I can't stop it. I'm going to walk through this as clearly as I can because I think I've figured it out, enough to understand what's happening to me. I spent 2 weeks in the library archives and found it, an obituary from August 1998. Emma, my last name, age 6, drowned in Miller's Creek. Listed parents, my parents. I couldn't breathe for 10 minutes when I saw it. I confronted them. It took 3 hours of demanding answers, of showing them the newspaper scan on my phone. My mom finally broke. She just collapsed. My mom told me about Emma, 6 years old, died in an accident at the creek. A neighbor was supposed to be watching her. My parents never got over it. They had me a year later. But here's where it gets wrong. They're claiming they named me Emma from birth. Birth certificate mishap, they said, except I was born Catherine. I have memories of being Catherine, vivid, specific memories. But somehow I'm becoming her, the dead one, and I don't think I can stop it. The comment section went into overdrive. If even 1% of this is real, leave Millbrook today. Whatever is happening, it's localized to that town. Get distance and see if your sense of identity stabilizes. The Facebook photos detail is what got me. You're in those photos. You're literally looking at evidence of experiences you don't remember having. That's not false memory. That's something else. Exactly. You don't develop false memories of visual experiences you can see. She's looking at herself living a life she didn't experience. That's not psychology breaking down. That's reality breaking down. Everyone was asking the same question. What would you do if you were becoming someone else and nobody could remember that you ever were?
So she stopped fighting, signed the paperwork, updated her driver's license, let the town's version of her become the legal version. And for about 2 weeks, Things went quiet. I found the 1998 obituary. I think I understand what's happening, and I can't stop it. The lawyer called it done on a Tuesday. Emma on everything now. The relief lasted 12 days. Then the photographs started appearing. My parents' anniversary album from last month, Emma in the family photo. Age 6, same dress from 1998, same gap-toothed smile. My brother's college photos. Emma sitting in the dorm, age 6. Yesterday I found her in a family reunion picture dated 2024. In that one, she looked maybe 8. Still 6-year-old Emma, but older. She's following me through time. I pulled the 1998 obituary from the archive. Black and white print, her name, her date. 5 years old at death. But the photographs keep coming. In each new batch, she's aged. Last week's school photo, she was 10. If I don't stop her, she'll be my age soon. She's rewriting every moment I ever lived into moments she lived instead. Every birthday becoming hers. Every school event, every heartbreak rewritten as hers. I'm not Emma. I was never Emma. I'm the thing that grew in the empty space where she died. And now that I've accepted the name, now that I've surrendered the fight, I think I'm finally disappearing. That's the descent. Not into paranoia or madness, into clear-eyed horror. OP lost her place in reality. She was the placeholder, and the placeholder is being filled. The way people are so certain they're right that you're starting to doubt yourself. That's the scariest part. That's how gaslighting works on a town-wide scale. You're in a reality loop, and they're all anchoring it. No, this isn't doubt. This is knowing. I know what I am now. I'm the thing this town needed to exist, and I can't stop it. And that's the horror at the heart of identity. Not being killed, being overwritten, being the placeholder in someone else's story. On to the next one.
My hospital roommate watched me sleep for 4 days and refused to leave. She knew things about my childhood I never told anyone. This is a story about a hospital stay that should have been routine, but sometimes the people around us are hiding things we can't see or don't want to see. I was admitted Tuesday for emergency appendix surgery. Pre-op tests, anesthesia briefing, routine. By noon, I was in the operating room. When I woke up, I was in a semi-private room, 2 beds separated by a curtain. My roommate was already there, a woman in her 50s. She seemed quiet. Asked what I was in for. I said appendix. She nodded. I was exhausted and in pain. Nurses came by every hour for vitals and medication. My roommate kept to herself. By evening, I wanted to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. At first, I didn't know where I was. Post-surgery confusion, where your brain hasn't caught up. The room was dark except for pale light from the hallway. My side throbbed, still half-drugged from anesthesia. That's when I saw her. She was standing at the edge of the curtain, just standing there in darkness, completely still, staring right at me. Her silhouette was clear against the dim hallway light. She wasn't moving, just watching. I don't know how long I stared back. Maybe 10 seconds? I was too confused and medicated to react, too vulnerable with fresh stitches. Then I blinked, and when I looked again, she was gone. But that image of her standing there in the dark, watching me, didn't leave. It stayed with me all night. And that's where the nightmare started. But here's where it gets worse, because that wouldn't be the last time she'd be watching in the darkness.
The next 2 nights, the escalation continued. The watching was already a violation, intrusion, a breach of basic privacy. But this new phase was worse. She was proving she had knowledge she shouldn't have. Details from OP's past. Information that had no reason to exist in a stranger's awareness. The first morning after surgery, I lay still and pretended to sleep when Em stirred. She moved around and then just started talking, not to me, just into the room. You must have been in so much pain before the surgery. I'd never told her that. That first day, the comments kept coming. Your mom worried about you a lot, didn't she? I hadn't mentioned my mother. Then, you built train sets as a kid, didn't you? I had at age 9, obsessively, something I'd never talked about. By the second night, it escalated. She mentioned Daniel by name, my best friend from middle school, who moved away freshman year. I'd never said his name to anyone here. She said it so casually, like making conversation, but my entire body went rigid under my blanket. When I demanded to know how she knew, she just smiled that knowing smile and changed the subject. The worst part was everything else she knew. My shoulder scar, which she couldn't even see through the curtain, that I was left-handed, my birthday in spring. Each time I asked how, she'd laugh softly and go quiet, like this was a game only she understood. By the end of that second night, I wasn't sleeping. I was staring at the curtain, gripping my IV pole, trying to figure out who this woman actually was. So now OP was trapped. Not locked in physically, could have left if the doctor cleared it. But mentally, emotionally, unable to account for how much this person seemed to know. The comments kept coming. Each one a revelation, each one impossible. A scar she couldn't see. A birthday she guessed right, names from years ago. And every time OP demanded answers, the same smile, the same laugh, the same refusal to explain.
By day 3, the watching had become routine. She would shift when OP stirred. She would wait. And when OP finally had to interact with her, nurses asking standard post-op questions, orderlies moving through. The roommate kept inserting these small, impossible things into the conversation. Things she shouldn't have known. I stopped being able to pretend it was in my head. On the 3rd day, the nurse came in to check my vitals, and my roommate just commented. She said, "At least your mom lets you eat solid food now. I remember mine wouldn't let me have much after my surgery." The nurse left. I didn't say anything, but my stomach dropped. My mom had been calling me about when I'd be cleared to eat. I hadn't mentioned it to anyone on that side of the curtain. The roommate had just heard the nurse ask if I was hungry and filled in this detail about my childhood like she'd been there. The next morning, worse. A resident came by and asked about my family history. I said my uncle had appendicitis in his 20s. The roommate listened from her bed. After the resident left, she said, "My brother had the same thing, but my family wasn't as forgiving about it as yours was. Your parents got you the good surgery, right? Expensive. They cared." I felt sick. How did she know my parents paid for the private surgeon? I'd never mentioned that to anyone. The curtain between us felt like nothing. She was describing my family's dynamics with this casual certainty, like she'd been sitting at my dinner table. By day 4, I wasn't sleeping when she could see me. I positioned myself so if she stood at the curtain gap, she'd only see my back. She never tried to talk to me after that, but I could feel the attention. It was like a pressure in the room. One nurse actually asked if the roommate was bothering me. What was I supposed to say? That she somehow knows the layout of my childhood? That sounded insane. The internet agreed it sounded impossible, but it also felt like something far more dangerous than a coincidence. The image of her standing at that curtain line in the dark watching you sleep is genuinely going to live in my head forever. That's peak horror, the violation during your most vulnerable moment. The hospital's HIPAA privacy policy prevents them from confirming her identity to you, even if you asked directly. They can't say yes or no to anyone but her. You're blocked from basic verification by law. I actually asked the nurse point blank after she refused discharge. The nurse wouldn't confirm anything except that my roommate had medical reasons for staying. I pushed and asked for the roommate's first name, just to know who I was dealing with, and the nurse shut it down hard. She said she couldn't share that information, so I never even learned her actual name. She just existed in my room for 4 days, watching me, knowing me, and then she was gone. No paper trail, no name, nothing to follow. And that's when she revealed everything.
I found records from Meadowbrook, and now I don't know if I'm going crazy. The nurse came by early to tell me my tests came back clear, and the doctor would discharge me that afternoon. I looked over at her bed, expecting to see relief on her face. Instead, she was already sitting up, staring. When the doctor came in, she didn't move. He said she was medically cleared to go home. She said she wasn't leaving. He looked confused. He explained her numbers were good, her therapy was complete, she met every discharge criterion. She said no, not today. After he left, I asked what was happening. That's when she leaned forward. "I know where you came from," she said quietly. "Meadowbrook, 1998. Dr. Holloway ran the unit. The night nurse was Sarah Chen. You had the blue room with the window they kept the curtain drawn on." She kept going, listing staff names I hadn't thought about in years, specific details, the recreation room schedule, what they served on Thursdays, things I never told another soul. You don't remember me because you were only there 3 months. But I was there longer, much longer. And I never forgot your face. The comment section split between horror and skepticism. The most disturbing part is that she chose to stay. That wasn't an accident or a bureaucratic delay. She wanted those extra days in a room with you. That's calculated. Repressed memories of childhood hospitalization are real and documented, but so are elaborate false memories implanted through suggestion. If she knew that many specific details, you need a trauma specialist, not a regular therapist. This is the right call. A trauma specialist can differentiate between actual repressed memory and implanted memory through structured recall techniques. The key question: are there medical records that confirm OP was ever a patient anywhere? If Meadowbrook has no record of her, and no other psychiatric facility does either, but the roommate knew incredibly specific details, that's when things get genuinely disturbing.
The discharge came through the next morning, but when OP stepped into that hallway, the nightmare didn't end there. I found records from Meadowbrook, and now I don't know if I'm going crazy. When I left my room the next morning, she was standing in the hallway, still in her hospital gown, still watching. Our eyes met for 3 seconds, then I moved as fast as I could to the elevator. I spent the next week searching for answers. Newspaper archives, hospital registries, medical journals, Meadowbrook Psychiatric Facility. I searched every database I could access. Nothing. No record of it ever existing, no staff rosters, no closing announcements in any archives. But she knew things. Specific details about my childhood that I never shared with anyone. If the facility isn't real, how is that possible? If she isn't real, how did she know those things? I called the hospital 3 separate times asking for her information. Each time they refused. Privacy laws prevent them from releasing patient details to other patients. So I can't verify her name, can't verify she was ever admitted, can't verify any of it. I'm still searching, scrolling through yearbooks and medical histories and cemetery records, looking for any trace of Meadowbrook, looking for her face, trying to prove she was real. But maybe I'm the one losing it. The comments section lit up. Have you tried searching newspaper archives for Meadowbrook? If it was a real psychiatric facility, there would be articles about its closing, staff rosters, maybe even mentions in old medical journals. And that's the thing about a story like this. The unanswered questions stick with you longer than any jump scare ever could. OP is out of that hospital, but they're never getting out of their head. On to the next one.
I got a panicked call from my mom saying my brother wasn't responding. I watched the police arrive at his apartment in real time while I was 2,000 miles away. And I think someone helped him overdose. Sometimes a phone call changes everything in an instant. A call like that from your mother, when you're on the other side of the country, hits different. I'm living in California for the past 3 years. My brother is back east with our parents. We're close enough to text, far enough that I miss the small stuff. That Tuesday morning, Mom called. Not texted, called. And her voice was completely wrong. Your brother isn't answering. I've been calling since 6 a.m. Something is deeply wrong. I told her he was probably sleeping. He works late warehouse shifts. He'd text her back when he woke up. Everything would be fine. But she wouldn't accept that. She kept saying she could feel it, that something was deeply wrong in her gut. I half believed her because parents have that instinct, but it was 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. People sleep in. Then she told me she'd already called the police for a wellness check. My stomach dropped. I pulled up my phone, typed live police scanner, county, into Google, and found an app. You can listen to local dispatch in real time. I put in my earbuds. Static. Coded chatter. My heart was already hammering. Then, buried in the traffic, units responding to welfare check. That was his apartment building. I was at my desk in an open office, 2,000 miles away, listening to officers confirm they were on scene, and there was absolutely nothing I could do but listen. The helplessness of being that far away, of watching an emergency unfold through a radio frequency you could hear but not touch, would define the next hours of his life. Panic doesn't feel like you think it will. It's not as loud. It's quieter, colder. It's the moment when your phone call confirms what you hoped you were wrong about. I had Mom on the phone. She was trying hard not to fall apart, but I could hear it, her voice getting thin, shaky. "They're still there," she kept saying. "Why are they still there?" I didn't have an answer. The scanner kept running on my laptop. Every few seconds, another code word, unit numbers, cross streets, 1147, 1152, 1203. An hour passed. No updates. I called the non-emergency line again. "I don't have information to release at this time." I didn't push back. My brother had been living alone for 6 months since his breakup with Sarah. Bad one. The kind where you disappear into yourself. I hadn't thought much about it until that moment, but suddenly it clicked. We hadn't talked in 3 days. 3 days. He'd missed work Monday. When I texted him Monday night, just a stupid meme, nothing came back. Tuesday, I figured he was sleeping, needed space. But now I was understanding something I'd never said out loud. I'd been waiting for a call like this. Not consciously, but somewhere inside me, I'd always known. He'd been drifting, pulling away, and I hadn't done anything. None of us had. The silence on the line, Mom's breathing, the scanner hum, felt like it was telling us what we were too afraid to say. The weight of the wait was different now. Not fear anymore, certainty. And certainty couldn't be taken back. The police radio kept talking. Mom kept waiting. OP kept listening, unable to do anything but witness, unable to help, unable to fix it from 2,000 miles away. Every second was an hour. Every hour was forever. The police called the house while OP was at work. Mom's voice was barely holding together. "My brother was found unresponsive in his apartment this morning. I'm 2,000 miles away and spent the last 6 hours listening to police scanner traffic, trying not to lose my mind. I need someone to tell me this doesn't mean what I think." James had been sober 2 years after a rough college period. He genuinely turned things around. Good job, normal life. 3 months ago, he mentioned a new friend. Our mom never liked this guy, said he had bad energy and was always pushing James to do things he didn't want to do. Paramedics found him in his bedroom. Empty bottles on the nightstand, a syringe nearby. They think overdose. He was still alive when they arrived. Ambulance took him to the hospital. He's in intensive care. The doctors won't say much beyond his vitals being unstable. I keep replaying our text conversation from 2 days ago. He told me this friend wanted him to do some kind of test, something stupid he said he didn't want to do. I told him to distance himself from this guy. I thought that was enough. But here's what won't leave my head. James hated needles. Genuinely couldn't watch when he got blood drawn, would nearly pass out. So why would he have both bottles and a needle? Why that combination? It doesn't fit. None of this fits. The post went live late that night. Comments came in waves. Please consider reaching out to anti-cult organizations and groups that work on psychological coercion. They may have resources and possibly information about this Michael or similar organizations. You're not alone in this. One comment in particular changed everything. A researcher with a background in coercive control groups. The Harmony House pattern you're describing, isolation, controlled substances, creating dependency, orchestrated tests, that's textbook coercive control. These groups are operating everywhere and getting away with it because the harm is almost always ruled as the victim's choice. The word journals hung in that screen. It cracked something open.
2 weeks later, OP came back with an update post. His journals suggest they weren't accidents. 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in a hospital hallway. Now I'm here, numb. My brother is alive, but will probably never wake up. Extensive neurological damage. The hypoxia lasted too long. The doctors say the dose was lethal territory. But the toxicology doesn't match. The drug mix, purity, dosage, none of it fits. The detective kept asking strange questions. About money. About whether my brother owed anyone anything. The friend, I'll call him Jay, he's gone. Vanished 2 days after my brother was admitted. Jay had serious money problems. and my brother had loaned him 5 grand. My brother was always too trusting. The police recovered deleted texts. Jay was at the apartment that night, definitely there. Then we found Michael's journals, pages where he'd written about Jay, about feeling trapped, about pressure, about things that didn't feel right. The detectives won't spell it out, but the implication is heavy. This wasn't just bad luck. There was intent. There was deliberation. The comments that came in weren't sympathy anymore. They were dread. I work in law enforcement. Without a witness statement or evidence that Michael directly administered the substance, the case becomes impossible to prosecute. It's a massive gap in how we handle psychological manipulation and coerced self-harm. The system is broken on this. This is why we need laws that specifically address coercive psychological harm leading to self-injury or death. Other countries are starting to prosecute this under psychological abuse statutes. The US is way behind. Someone should be pushing for legislative change based on cases exactly like this. But there were quieter voices too. My uncle disappeared into something similar 15 years ago. We never found out what group it was. Your story is bringing up things I haven't thought about in ages. I'm sorry you're going through this. That hit different. The idea that this wasn't isolated, that somewhere else, another family was walking this same nightmare, made it all feel heavier in a way that legal details couldn't touch. 2 weeks passed. The investigation tightened. His journals suggest they weren't accidents. The toxicology report came back inconsistent. Brother's tolerance, the dosage, the purity, nothing matched his habits. Paramedics found him with both bottles and a syringe, a combination that made no sense for an overdose he supposedly caused himself. Police interviews sharpened. They wanted details about Jay, the new friend, the one brother had loaned money to. When they pulled the phone records and secured the apartment, they recovered deleted texts. Jay had been there that night. More than that, the messages showed Jay asking about brother's schedule, when he'd be home alone, whether he kept cash at the apartment, and then the journals. Brother kept notebooks where he'd written his thoughts. Reading between the lines, you could see the grooming. Jay had isolated him, positioned himself as the only person who understood, convinced him the money wasn't really a loan, got him using again after 2 years clean. The prosecutors think this wasn't accidental. They think Jay deliberately administered an overdose too much to survive. Brother is in a persistent vegetative state now. Doctors say he may never wake up. The state is investigating Jay for attempted murder. He's officially a person of interest. And I keep thinking, the whole thing might have been prevented if I'd been there, if we'd been closer, if someone had noticed what was happening sooner. But that's the guilt talking, and maybe that's something I need to work through. The comments on this one hit different. The guilt you're probably carrying about not being close to him, about not being there. Please talk to someone about that. This wasn't your fault. His withdrawal wasn't a personal rejection. This was predatory grooming. None of this was him choosing. And that's the thing about cases like this. It's not a mystery with a neat solution. It's a family destroyed, young man in a persistent vegetative state with no way out, and a legal process that could stretch on for years without delivering anything close to closure. The real horror isn't in the drugs or the toxicology report. It's in the possibility of deliberation. Someone didn't slip something accidental into a drink. Someone thought it through. Someone knew what they were doing. And that is the last story for today.